The future that never was. We were promised a future where cars would breathe out nothing but water vapor, gliding on an endless supply of clean hydrogen. Automakers held press conferences with glowing concept cars. Journalists hailed it as the ultimate eco-friendly solution, and governments even threw money at pilot programs. The vision was bold: zero emissions, fast refueling, and a driving experience indistinguishable from gasoline. Hydrogen was supposed to save us from pollution and oil dependency. It sounded perfect until reality set in. The tech was expensive, the infrastructure non-existent, and consumers barely interested. Somewhere between the drawing board and the dealership, the dream fell apart. These cars weren't just killed off, some of them barely even made it out of the lab. Today, we're counting down 7 hydrogen cars that were born to fail and didn't survive. 7. Nissan X-Trail FCV. Let's kick things off with Nissan's forgotten experiment, the X-Trail FCV. On paper, a rugged little SUV powered by clean hydrogen. It even made headlines back in 2003 as part of Nissan's big push for alternative fuels. But here's the catch: you couldn't actually buy one. A few lucky test drivers in Japan and California got to lease one, and that was it. Between the insane cost of producing it, the laughable hydrogen infrastructure, and Nissan quickly realizing it couldn't scale, the X-Trail quietly disappeared. It was a ghost of a car before it even hit the streets. To make matters worse, reviews at the time criticized its mediocre range, slow acceleration, and high noise levels. It felt more like a science experiment on wheels than a viable consumer vehicle, which sealed its fate before it had any chance to shine. 6. Ford Focus FCV. Ford had big dreams for its hydrogen Focus. In the mid-2000s, they rolled out a pilot fleet of FCVs based on the humble Focus sedan, and it actually looked pretty normal. No wild concept car vibes here. But normal didn't save it. Ford's own engineers admitted the cost of each car was astronomical. The tanks were too bulky, and the fuel cell tech just wasn't ready for prime time. Like so many others on this list, it was tested in a few US cities, racked up some media buzz, then got quietly buried. The Focus FCV was essentially a rolling lab test, offering insights into hydrogen's flaws rather than proving it as a real solution. Drivers noted sluggish performance, limited cargo space due to the massive hydrogen tanks, and a constant fear of running out of fuel with nowhere to refill. Ford learned the hard way that hydrogen needed much more time and money to mature before consumers would ever buy it. 5. Toyota FCHV and FCHV-adv. Before Toyota's Mirai, there was the clunky FCHV and its slightly upgraded sibling, the FCHV-adv. Based on the old Highlander, these SUVs were Toyota's early stabs at proving hydrogen worked. And technically it did, but at a cost no sane consumer would pay. They were all lease-only, available to a microscopic pool of drivers, and Toyota quickly learned that just because you can build it doesn't mean anyone will buy it. Drivers often reported poor fuel economy compared to the promised range, sluggish performance, and expensive maintenance that made even the most loyal Toyota fans skeptical. The FCHV line was essentially a science project on wheels, underdeveloped, overpriced, and ultimately overshadowed. Once the Mirai showed up, even Toyota wanted to forget it ever happened. 4. Hyundai 935 fuel cell, also known as Tucson FCV. This one actually went a step further. Hyundai proudly claimed the 935 fuel cell was the world's first mass-produced hydrogen car. And technically, that's true, but mass-produced was a stretch. Sales numbers were pitiful. Hydrogen refueling stations were almost non-existent outside Southern California, and even hardcore green car fans shrugged. Early adopters were met with confusing lease terms, long waits at the few available pumps, and repair issues that dragged on for weeks due to scarce parts. It was replaced by the sleeker Nexo. But honestly, that's still just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. The 935 FCV proved you can mass-produce something and still have nobody care. It stood as proof that being first doesn't always mean being successful. 3. Mercedes-Benz B-Class F-Cell. When Mercedes stepped into the hydrogen game, you'd expect a little magic, right? Wrong. The B-Class F-Cell looked and drove like an economy hatchback, with a luxury price tag and limited range. It was only ever leased to a handful of customers in California and Europe. And even they complained about the hassle of finding fuel and how underwhelming the car actually was. Performance was lackluster, and the interior felt dated despite the premium badge. Mercedes quietly pulled the plug, pivoted to electric EQ models, and pretended the F-Cell never existed. Probably the right call. 2. GM Hydrogen Fleet and Equinox FCV. Coming in at number 2 is an entire family of failures, the GM Hydrogen series. Starting as flashy concept cars in the early 2000s, GM even created a whole fleet of fuel cell Equinox SUVs and sent them to New York and LA for real-world testing. But despite millions poured into our /&D, GM never figured out how to make it affordable or how to convince anyone to care. The program suffered from slow refueling times, questionable reliability, and enormous costs that scared off potential buyers and investors. After years of hype, the hydrogen program fizzled out, leaving behind nothing but a sad pile of press releases and dusty prototypes. 1. Honda Clarity Fuel Cell. And topping our list, the Honda Clarity Fuel Cell, perhaps the most infamous flop of them all. Honda genuinely tried here, offering the Clarity as a futuristic alternative to EVs. But the lease-only policy, sky-high price, and constant refueling headaches doomed it from start. Even in California, where hydrogen stations actually exist, drivers complained about long lines, broken pumps, laughable range anxiety, and poor resale value. Reviews noted how the Clarity felt more like a compromise than a breakthrough, with driving dynamics that didn't wow and ownership headaches that never went away. By 2021, Honda threw in the towel, killing not just the fuel cell but the entire Clarity lineup. The car that was supposed to save the planet barely managed to save itself from being forgotten. Lessons learned? So what did we learn? Just because you can build a hydrogen car doesn't mean you should. Between the cost, the lack of infrastructure, and the rise of affordable EVs, hydrogen cars never really stood a chance. These 7 models weren't just killed, they were born to fail. And until the world figures out how to make clean, cheap hydrogen on a massive scale, it's hard to see a comeback anytime soon. Let me know in the comments, would you ever give hydrogen another shot? Or is it time to let this tech rest in peace?